Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Smith. I am your host today here on Nurse Deck Podcast, and today we are interviewing Rachel Lattner. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, so good to be here.
Thank you for being with us today. Can you tell us, how did you get into nursing? Can you tell us about your journey?
Yeah, so I think that everyone has kind of their own story in terms of how they became a nurse or went into the nursing field. And for me, I wouldn't say that there was anything specific that really made the decision for me. It was more of kind of how I was brought up. I was the oldest of three, and I was always kind of the second mom. And I just enjoyed caring for others. So it seemed like, in terms of a personality fit, that seemed to fit me the best. So I went into nursing because of that.
Well, that makes sense. You said you were the oldest of three kids and you became the second mom. So caring for others just became a part of who you are. And so you landed in the nursing. Is that right?
Yeah. My mom was a single mom. So, I think a lot of people have kind of dealt with that, either where their parents are busy and they kind of had to step up, or they were a child of a single parent. So, me being, a child of a single mom, I had to always be there for my siblings and help them out.
Got it. So what are you most passionate about and what keeps you motivated?
It's funny that I think just me, who I am, I really enjoy health and fitness in general. And so I think that's another thing that just makes sense. A couple times I've thought about, like, okay, what else would I do? And I just think that our bodies in general are so fascinating and how they work. And I'm always learning something new. I love getting to know people and kind of what makes them work too, and what makes them who they are. So that's another component that I really enjoy. And in terms of, health, I really enjoy connecting with other people who are providers, or who work in the field, and kind of them sharing their experience with me.
Thank you for that. I can relate to that too. You said the human body and how it works. It's fascinating. You just can't imagine doing anything else. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, really, it is. It's like every single time that I find something new, that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, how does that work, or something? It's always
Right.
really related to, like, the body or health or wellness or something like that. And it kind of sparks that interest again and sparks that passion again. And I'm like, just when you think you know most of what's going on, or whatever in a particular field, then there's something else to be like, wow, that just totally amazed me.
I can relate 100%. Like the endocrinology, the negative feedback system, and learning that is like so neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Endocrinology. Wow. That's like a field in itself that's just so intricate. And there's so many different, like, conditions in there. And it is fascinating.
Rachel, can you tell us, what is a nurse practitioner? What's the difference between a nurse and a nurse practitioner?
So a nurse practitioner has either a master's or a doctorate degree in nursing. And so what that allows them to do is, in some states, you can practice independently, where you can have your own practice, you can have your own clinic, you can be a medical director, that kind of thing. And some states are more limited, but in general, you're able to see your own patients and prescribe medications and develop their treatment plans.
Okay. Just to make sure we understand, you're saying to be a nurse practitioner, you need a master's degree or a doctorate, which could be the DNP or PhD, correct?
Mhm. Mhm.
And some states allow independent practice, whereas other states are limited. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's different than a nurse, in that nurses carry out orders, and nurse practitioners are, because of their advanced training, are able to give orders.
They help with the treatment plan, they
Yeah.
diagnose, they treat.
Hmm.
Got it. So, how is it like to be a nurse practitioner?
It's great. I'm so happy that I went this route. And I think through COVID, things have fluctuated quite a bit, but I still really enjoy what I do. I can work independently, and I have worked independently in multiple different roles. And it's allowed me, to kind of like make my own decisions on what I think is right for the patient. And I still, really enjoy collaboration with the physicians that I've worked with. And so that's always a great aspect of it too. I think more than anything, it's just allowed me for a little bit of more freedom than what a nurse would do and even what a doctor would do. You are in this mid-level role is what they kind of refer to, and you do have more flexibility in terms of your schedule and specialty and all that. So I've really enjoyed it.
I can relate with you. I get to practice independently as well, but I do enjoy the collaboration with our long-term care doctors. And the freedom is really something that stands out with being a nurse practitioner that I have found versus when I was a nurse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, it always depends on what practice you're with and that kind of thing. But as a nurse practitioner, if you decide, hey, I want to do OB/GYN right now, and then in a few years or whatever, you're like, I really like oncology. That kind of sparked my interest, and I really like helping people through difficult times and helping them specifically like with breast cancer or whatever. You can make that transition versus like as a doctor, you absolutely have the independence, but it's a lot harder to make
Right.
that transition. And so I think that gives us the freedom to really say, like, of course, I still like health and wellness and just medicine in general, but I want to transition or pivot into something else that maybe reignites that passion for, caring for others, or you learn a kind of a different area or something like that, or a different specialty. So that's something that I think physicians don't have. And
Right.
sometimes I've heard them say, that's so great about our positions. And it's still, like you said, the freedom and independence more than a nurse.
Thank you for that. Yes. So, Rachel, how do you promote excellence in your chosen profession?
That's a great question. So I think that as me personally, I just have kind of a sense of not really sure if that's the right word, but just like a sense of pride and conviction in terms of doing what the right thing is. It's very important to me more than anything. And I've definitely had situations where they're challenging or they're questioning, kind of my decision is really going to determine how much I really believe in what's right and what's best for, either the project or the patient or general kind of medicine as a whole. So um, I think that for me, excellence is really doing what's right, what you think is right, and listening to your gut and carrying it out to the fullest. So I'm really just giving it 100%, even when it's challenging, even when people might not agree with it, you still go forward with it.
I respect what you said 110%. You mentioned giving patient care the best, the best care possible, giving excellent patient care, doing what's right, listening to your gut. Sometimes you just know things. You may not be able to put it into words exactly, but sometimes you just know something's not right. But you give it your all, you give it 100%. And you mentioned also earlier pride and conviction in doing the right thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I think those things can definitely be challenging at certain points. But it's just important to be able to sit right with yourself, with whatever decision that you make.
Rachel, what are some tips you have for other nurses looking into becoming a nurse practitioner?
So I would say, something that really helped me when I was becoming a nurse practitioner, I worked all throughout, but I still dedicated additional time to the specialty that I was most interested in. So I started off in sports med ortho, and I did my clinical rotations, the ones that were required, of course, but then there was also the ability to choose your own. And then in addition to that, I connected with a sports medicine guy in Chicago, close to where I was working, and dedicated additional hours there. And it wasn't necessary, but I think it really did help me. And so I would say that as a nurse, if you're thinking one particular area, or even if you're not, kind of taking the initiative on your own to reach out to coworkers and to supervisors and say, hey, I might be interested in this. I'd really like to spend some additional time with you or pick your brain on it. And that will kind of lead you and guide you into what you want to do, because there's all different roles for nurse practitioners. There's, everything that you can think of, and you just don't really know unless you are exposed to it. And I think as a nurse practitioner, one of the things that's different than a nurse and might not be beneficial for certain people is that it is a bigger commitment in terms of a practice. It's not like, at least in my eyes, you're a nurse practitioner, you're the provider for that patient. And you have to really, when you're picking a role, you have to really dedicate yourself to it,
Oh, yes.
because I wouldn't want to be that patient that, like, oh, I got a new nurse practitioner, she's great, I love her. And then like 6 months later, she's not there anymore. Like, you really are committed to that. So doing your own research, making sure it's something that you really want to do. If it's not, then that's okay. That's totally okay. You can find something else that you want to do. But just being willing to invest the time in the beginning to find out the specialty that you want and the practice that you want, and knowing that this could be a long-term commitment for you. And so I think that's really important.
So just to make sure I put this together, correct me if I'm wrong. Those who are listening today on our Nurse Tech podcast, the message you have to nurses wanting to become a nurse practitioner: one, do the research. Make sure it's really what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to specialize, or if you're thinking about a certain area, reach out, ask people, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I spend some time with you? Get those additional hours with them, because I don't know if you'd agree with this or not. I only had 2 years of NP schooling. I felt like I learned a ton, but it covered tip of the iceberg, and I got into geriatric medicine. So sure enough, when I graduated, I knew a lot, but having that time for me with that one-on-one geriatrician, it changed my whole, it helped tremendously with my stress level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, yeah, it's a different kind of perspective from a nurse to a nurse practitioner, because at least I felt like as a nurse that providers just kind of knew everything. I don't know why I thought that, but that they just know everything and anything.
Right.
And, they're the kind of say all. And if you get in with like a good collaborating physician or a good group of NPs, you'll quickly realize that, they don't know everything, and they will be
Exactly.
happy to share their information with you. But it's always evolving and changing, and a good one will be open to listening to you and potential suggestions you have, and also questions that you have. So I think as a nurse, if you're looking into a certain specialty, it's helpful to develop that relationship. It's helpful to understand that specialty or that practice more, and just also to understand what that dynamic might be like as well.
I like how you mentioned, Rachel, that not everybody knows all. There's always something to learn. And then once you get into your specialty, you'll realize that we're human. Like, there's always something to learn. Nobody knows all. So thank you
Yeah.
for that comment. Rachel, as a nurse practitioner and health safety supervisor, can you tell us more about the major role?
Yeah, so through COVID, it's kind of shifted for nurse practitioners, I would say, pretty significantly, and especially what specialty that you're in, because a lot of surgery and different facilities were really cutting down on the patients that they were allowing to come in. And so I kind of shifted from the practice that I was at. I actually got furloughed. It was predominantly nurse practitioner run, and I was one of the last people to get furloughed. And so I was looking at contracts and different opportunities, and I basically, had reached out to, friends and different entities and applied for different jobs. And that's kind of when I got into handling more of the COVID side for special events. So I started with the WNBA in 2020. I did their bubble and I completed their season. And then from there, I just really enjoyed working with sports and kind of an abstract role, because it's not like you go to a clinic and you see patients and stuff. Like, it's not really how it is. Like, you're functioning within the event. And so that involves a lot of preparation and really understanding the guidelines that are set forth for the event. And it also involves a lot of research in terms of that state's guidelines. So I've worked across the US for different events, a lot of basketball. I'm working with Big East now, which I love working with them. They're so great. And I've done swimming and, doing track and field now. And I'll do basketball again. I really like that. So just, it's a different kind of role. I've done some music festivals. I've worked with some artists and have helped them with their COVID compliance guidelines. And so that involves the guidelines, it involves research into the state's regulations, the ever-changing CDC guidelines, all that kind of stuff. So you're gathering all that information together, and then also looking at the bigger picture. So you're looking at what it's like to function with their event from, start to finish, and what it would look like in case of symptomatic patients, COVID positive patients, contact tracing, and all the details surrounding that. So that also takes an understanding of medicine in the background, even though it doesn't always feel like that. You are incorporating some of that into that event. And the way that I do that is I speak to infectious disease physicians and specialists, and I keep in close contact with them. I ask them questions. I connect with the state's health department. And then I formulate a team. I've been really fortunate to meet some pretty incredible people, and they have, invaluable skills. They are really, really organized. They're flexible. They're kind. They have great customer service. And it hasn't always been that they have a medical background. And I think that's one of the fun parts, is you're meeting people with all different backgrounds, that they are very, very good at what they do in their field, and you're helping them guide it and translate it into this new world where COVID is a factor, and we're all just trying to work through it while still having the same sports and different events that are going on. So it's been fun. It's definitely been interesting, challenging, sometimes long hours, sometimes, you have disagreements. Sometimes you have to put your foot down, that kind of thing. So you really have to be, what I was saying before is, you have to know what's right for yourself, and then also for the project as a whole, and be able to stand firm with that. And sometimes that can ruffle some feathers, but that's just the way it is.
Right. That sounds like a really cool role. And so you get to do research, you stay up to date on state guidelines, you've been to music festivals, working with artists, and staying up to date on the COVID, compliance, and staying up to date with CDC guidelines, which seems like it changes every so often. And you get to work with infectious disease and other specialists in the health department. You do a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely do a lot, and I work primarily, because those are kind of temporary events. So I work primarily on contracts. And then in addition to that, I still do trauma and orthopedics. So I work in Illinois and first assist, and then see patients in clinic. And I still enjoy doing that. Like, it's both of those things I enjoy for different reasons. I love being in the OR, and I love orthopedics because I feel like it's very satisfying to fix something. You know what I mean? Someone comes in with a broken arm and you put a plate on it and then it's fixed. Yeah, they have a recovery process, but you get to see that progression, and you get to see them like, hey, now I'm back to doing this activity or whatever. So for me, that's very satisfying. And then the other events, they are very satisfying too, because I get to see it from start to finish. And there's so many different intricate things that are totally way overhead in terms of how an event functions, zoning, and different people's responsibilities. And now we have the whole fan base. How are the fans going to be into this? And then what's the regulations of that particular facility, and all these kinds of things that we don't really experience working in a healthcare facility that now I've been exposed to and I've gotten to know. So it's been a lot of fun. And I do like to say that as my job, a lot of people will say work is work. And I'm like, then you really should explore other options,
Right.
because yes, work is work and it requires a lot of work and dedication. And sometimes, it's more difficult than others. But in general, I do describe my job as fun. I think that I have fun in the OR. I think I have fun in clinic and seeing patients. And I think I have fun at these events. I think it's all fun. I do work really hard at it, but it's fun.
It's obvious that you enjoy what you do. It's
Yeah.
which is great, So you work as a nurse practitioner and you're working as a health safety supervisor, which is like being a COVID compliance officer, pretty
Yeah.
much, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Rachel, how do you feel about the current working conditions for nurses, and how do you think society views nurses today?
I think society is really appreciative for nurses. I think, they definitely carried us through this pandemic. Um, I think that it is a struggle because for nurses, I would imagine that they're pretty burnt out from everything. And so I think that there's going to be a really difficult time with retention. And then, the rates for nurses are vary and fluctuate so much. And so I think that for people who have stayed in the hospital, they probably don't feel as valued as like travel nurses, in which a lot of people are going into travel nursing because of the rates. Um, which is still creating that fluctuation, and it's hard to kind of get things to be a little bit more solid and secure within hospital systems or healthcare facilities when that's happening. And I think that has also affected nurse practitioners. Nurse practitioners have seen quite a difference, I think, in terms of opportunity and pay through the pandemic, and where a lot of people are like, well, nurses are so needed, and they're making so much money, where nurses practitioners, that's not always the case. Our rates have dropped quite a bit. And which is where I say, you really have to like what you do, because I have seen that across the board, and I chose to go into contracts, and I really do enjoy what I do. And me personally, yeah, I probably could make more as a floor nurse. I could, but I that's not really where my passion is, and that's not really what I enjoy the most. So I love being a nurse practitioner. I think it's great. And that's probably something else I would add to nurses, as an advice is, if you're just looking for like a salary increase, becoming a nurse practitioner is probably not the way to go. But if you're looking for more meaning in your role and more autonomy and just more options, then I would say it's 100% the way to go.
Right. I agree. The autonomy part, especially. You mentioned retention being an issue with nurses not feeling valued. I hear that every day. I work post-acute care Monday through Friday, and they're paying these travelers more than what they're paying these nurses who've been in the facilities for 10 plus years. So I can relate with what you said.
And then I see it in the OR too, as a surgical tech, has a much less training than a nurse practitioner, and they're making at least 1.5 times more than me. So it's definitely happening all over, and I totally value each one of the roles. I think what kind of makes it difficult is probably for nurses who are staying permanent. They're like, well, I don't see the value in me staying permanent and me dedicating my time and my energy to a facility that I don't really see like that being valued. And I have the experience and I have the knowledge and I know how this facility works versus the travelers. And then, as a nurse practitioner, it's like, I have 7+ years of education, plus I've been in this field for however long
Right.
and dedicated my life to this. And then someone with a lot less education is making more than you. It's like, it makes it feel like you aren't being valued as you
Right.
should be. And so again, like, you have to make the decision for yourself is, do I enjoy this? Am I happy doing this? Because I think that brings a lot of value to yourself. And that's really what's most important. Money is great, 100%. I like money. I love money,
We all
I do. But sometimes that does mean sacrifice. And if you're willing to sacrifice kind of your peace of mind and your schedule and your location, then yeah, maybe travel nursing is the way to go, or travel surgical tech. But for me, I like what I do. I like where I'm doing it and how I'm doing it. So it's valuable to me.
Yeah, you got to look past the money. If you want to be a nurse practitioner, you got to look at it as a whole picture. You got to look beyond just the money.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you think we can help our nurses today to boost the morale and keep them going?
Yeah, I would say, I think the easy answer is like pay. I think that's what a lot of people would say, but I think that there's other things that can be done within facilities to make them feel valued. And that could be events, um, or that could be like having regular meetings, or maybe making mental health options available. I know when I worked on one particular event, when I was with the WNBA, I did work with 2 nurses, and they really showed me the value of like the little things, and that it is important to do the little things for other people so that way they feel appreciated. So that's what I would say for the healthcare facilities, is making them feel valued by the little things. I know a lot of events that I've done, they've had a mental health counselor available for certain hours. And I think that would be also very beneficial for facilities to have, like, hey, we have this telemedicine, mental health counselor who's available from these hours to these hours, if anyone wants to check in and just see them. Or we're now offering, just a suggestion, like, Better Health, like, hey, we're offering 50% off of Better Health if you want to take this, and you can sign up for it and you can schedule when it's appropriate for you, or something along those lines, to just be like, hey, we're supporting you in the best way we can, even if it's not, increasing your pay to 150 an hour or something like that, like, or like a free coffee day, like coffee, like that makes a big difference. I think, like I said, when I worked in that one bubble, they really showed me the value and the importance of making others feel appreciated. And I do try to do that with every event that I do. A lot of times I'm leading a team of people and buying them coffee from time to time. It's very, like, not a lot of money when you consider the value that it brings to someone else.
That's right.
So I'd make an effort to do that. And I think if facilities did that, then they would see just a better morale, I think, in general for nurses.
I respect your comments so much. I don't even know where to start. It's those little small things that our employers do that really stand out. I've seen the administrators for the nursing home bring coffee, bring donuts. Like you said, it really doesn't cost a whole lot, but it makes everybody feel like they're valued, they're appreciated. It makes them work harder. Like, it shows that, it makes them feel good to know that they took time out of their day to buy us coffee and donuts, and it boosts the morale, makes us work harder. And then, like you said, having regular meetings, and then mental health options. You mentioned that, but it's those little things that really do make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt being burned out with all that you do?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think there's been different times in my career where I felt burnt out, and yeah, I think that's where it's a good idea to take some time to yourself. And on these contracts, I do dedicate a lot of time to them and a lot of work. And so on my off time, I like to visit friends and, go someplace. Like, one time I took a trip to Nashville, and that was during COVID and most things were closed, but I was with a friend and we had a good time just kind of going out and hiking and seeing different places. I also think for me, I really enjoy working out. So it's really important for me to make that a priority each day. Um, every day I need to work out, even if it's just for 30 minutes at a time. And it is, of course, I want to stay healthy and in shape physically, but it's also mentally. It really helps me mentally. I just feel so much better, even if it's 30 minutes. And then the other thing I do, just to kind of make sure that my mind is prepared for the whole day, is writing out a list. And I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, 3 things I'm proud of, and then my intention for the day. And it at first, when I wrote down that list, I remember first writing it down and I was like, okay, grateful for, like, I don't know why it was very hard to think of something, but now it's really just so simple and so easy and quick. Like I will write down anything. So, I'm moving into a home and I had movers come in yesterday and they did such a great job. They, helped me move in all the stuff, which is awesome, but they also helped me. The guy organized my spice rack and like which was pretty amazing. And like, I think that sometimes these little things that people do, when you're in line and someone buys you coffee in front of you or something like that, or when you were at the grocery store and you had like 3 things and they let you go ahead of you, like they didn't have to do that. And it's so easy to forget. And then when you write that list, it just really prepares your mind for the whole day. Like you're looking for that thing to make you feel grateful for your life and for what you're doing. And then the proud thing, like I think everyone kind of goes through this feeling where, they might not feel good enough or they're a little bit of an imposter, especially if you're a new nurse or a new nurse practitioner, like you're.
So, Rachel, you mentioned visiting friends. You took a trip to Tennessee. You ended up going hiking. You mentioned exercise, even just 30 minutes at a time. It's not just good for your physical self, but it's good for your mental. I know I've taken time to walk for 10 minutes and I feel like a different person. You also mentioned writing, and this sticks with me. You said to write down 3 things that you are grateful for. And you said it takes no time, but it puts things into perspective. You don't have time to be mad at all this. I mean, of course, life happens. We're human. We get upset. But keeping in mind what you're happy, what you're grateful for, it keeps you on that positive side of life. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really does. It just prepares your mind for the entire day. And then you want to look for those things. And I definitely get frustrated and upset and angry at times too. But like, it really, the one thing I've noticed with it too, I think everyone, what they value in life is probably different. And so what you're grateful for might be different. But for me, what I write down most often is people. I'm grateful for certain people who made a difference in my life for that day. So, my aunt is very consistent in my life. A lot of times I'll write down her. And then, like I said, the movers yesterday, like him organizing my spice rack, I was just like, oh, thank goodness. And um, I had like a security guy come like for monitoring and whatever. And he told me about how they have this remote garage opener for $5 that I could add on, which I was looking online and it was like $70 everywhere else. And I was like, that's so amazing. Like,
That is.
yes, of course, they're making a sale and whatever, but they were there already. It was literally $5 more. It was nice of him to even mention it. He took his time. Like, for me, it's most often people, but for someone else, it might be something else, and it just really helps you reshape your mind for the day, I think.
Thank you for that. So we're curious, how did you know you were burnt out? What were the red flags? How did you even know that you were burnt out?
So I think that for me, I see it more, I'm pretty self-aware. And so I see it more with my patients. When my patient starts to run more and more thin and I don't allow people the time that I'm interacting with or my best self, and then I reflect back on the moment and I'm like, oh, that wasn't that good. Then I start to notice that. Or I'm just more physically tired, like just wanting to sleep more, not doing as much stuff. I do work out on a regular basis. So if that starts to go by the wayside, then I'm like, oh no, we can't be going down this again. No, we got to like get back on this. So those things for me, I think show up when I start to get burnt out. And then I have to really reevaluate my schedule. And sometimes it happens where I will over sign up for things, like I will overcommit. And it's not like I felt like I had to do those things. I wanted to do those things and I was very excited, but it can still burn you out in the same way. So having time for yourself and that separation and making sure you're getting enough sleep and you're eating right and you're working out and you're doing those things, and taking care of yourself first is very important.
It is very important. I agree. And also learning how to say no, which it can be hard to do. So, Rachel, what are your thoughts on the community? How do you think nurses can benefit from Nurse Deck?
I think that, you know, being exposed to different people and their kind of experience and, you know, what works for them. I think we're all individuals. And so when you feel like you're part of a bigger purpose and a bigger meeting, and you're able to connect with other nurses or nurse practitioners through a centralized source, I think it's beneficial in the way that you're exposed to different opportunities, exposed to different options, but then also you feel more supported.
I agree. You get to talk to people, make that connection with others who understand.
Yeah.
So, is there a topic that I maybe not have brought up today that you would like to discuss that we'd like to share with everyone else? Any other topics?
Not really that I can think of. I just think that, you know, it's just, I think there's something that drew us all to nursing in general. And I think that baseline is just like caring for others and finding meaning in what you do. And that's really important. So just always trying to come back to that, I think, is helpful. And sometimes what you do and what's important and what's meaningful, it doesn't always mean giving a patient a medication or, you know, delivering this IV thing or giving them like wound care, whatever, you know, or like helping in the OR. It's not always that. Sometimes it's just being there and being present and listening. Sometimes I think, I don't know how you feel as a nurse practitioner. Sometimes I don't even say like, okay, we're going to do this treatment instead, or we're going to do this or whatever. And I don't change anything objective, but I listen to what they say and they feel better even from that. Like giving them the time, giving other people the time, and your presence, I think, is also very therapeutic and helpful.
So, thank you for today. We really
Of course.
appreciate the time on Nurse Deck.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
you.
much. Bye, guys.